Thank you. Senator Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair Powell, can you talk about how our interest rates compare to other first-class countries around the world?
At the higher end.
And how does that affect the United States?
Well, I mean, I think that reflects a couple things. One is just that the U.S. economy has outperformed, has been stronger than others. And I mean, I don't want to pick on any other nations, but many other nations have had much lower growth, now have lower inflation, and are, have pretty low growth, whereas the U.S. economy has really been the outstanding performer and remains that to this day. That implies somewhat higher rates.
So you say it's higher than most of first-class countries. Can you talk about historically where we've matched up with other countries?
Yeah, I mean, so let's just go back to when the pandemic hit, for example. We were at, we had very low rates during that era, but they were by far the highest in the developed world because the U.S. economy was the strongest. The European Union had negative rates. I think the Bank of England was at 75 basis points. I think we were at 2.4%, so we were meaningfully higher. And again, it was a time when we were just, our growth was higher. And their growth was lower, and their inflation was lower. Our inflation was fine, probably about the same as ours. So I think we've generally had a little bit higher rates than those countries because they have slower growth, older populations, lower productivity, those kind of things. We have the strongest economy in the world.
Globally gone up as well?
Sorry?
Have interest rates in those countries globally gone up as well?
Well, they went up.
The US?
All of those countries had their rates go up quite a bit during the global pandemic inflation, right? And as you know, many of them have been cutting their rates, and we had been too, and we'll at some point resume that. But we're 100 basis points lower than we were. I think if you take the EU and the Bank of England, they've both cut a little more than that.
How recently?
Recently, but But I think you probably read this, but they're either at or close to the end of their cutting cycles.
I know there's been a lot of talk today about deficits and the national debt, but how much does tax policy affect the economy in the U.S.?
I mean, it has big effects over time. It's really not something that drives what we do. It isn't. But I think tax policy plays over the long run a huge role in incentivizing investment, which helps growth and things like that. I think it's very, very important over the long run. Certainly more important than monetary policy.
Would a $4 trillion tax increase on middle-class Americans affect the economy?
Now here we're getting into the bill.
I understand. I'm asking how that would affect the economy and according to your data.
I'm trying to not make any direct comments on the bill today, if you'll forgive me. But I take your point.
Okay, I am trying to make a point, but there's got to be data that you sit on somewhere that would suggest that large tax increases would affect the economy, would stall economic growth in the U.S.
You could certainly get that out of a model if you wanted to. I mean, but again, I'm inevitably going to be commenting on the bill, right? If I answer that question, a lot
of talk today about inflation. You've already agreed that inflation is down from where it was a year ago, and would you say steadily declining?
Has been, yes. I more than agreed to it. I'm very pleased by it.
And all of the experts and so-called experts tell us that tariffs lead to inflation, but you seem to have suggested already that inflation is, if not under control, close to being under control.
So inflation's in a really good place. It is definitely in a good place, and we have a forecast, and so does, by the way, every other brand name forecaster in the country, which is very similar to ours, that there will be some inflation from tariffs coming. Not yet, but over the course of the coming months. And I think it's reasonable to expect that because someone has to pay. This is hundreds of billions of dollars of tariffs we're taking in. Some of that's going to fall on the consumer. Not all of it's going to fall on foreign manufacturers. And that's the only insight we have. And we're just kind of wanting to see more data on that before we move.
One final question about data. Our trade deficits with China, the EU, Canada, and Mexico have all significantly dropped recently. What does the data tell us about that?
Well, I think that's
How that would affect inflation?
how it would affect inflation. I don't know that it has implications for inflation, but it obviously reflects the tariffs. I think recently you've seen Chinese imports come down quite a bit.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thanks.
Senator Blunt?